So this is going to be a little bit of a long video, but bear with us. We have a lot of stuff to cover.
So, to those of you that are still with The Walking Dead, welcome. And to the 6 million of you who left, well, you didn't miss much.
So to start off, we finally know who Negan killed. It turns out it wasn't one, but it was two characters. Two beloved characters at that. And I want to mention that I feel really bad for Abraham. His death was completely overshadowed by Glenn's. I mean, the poor guy just didn't really get the respect he deserved in death because Glenn, who understandably so we've known longer, we care about a little bit more than Abraham.
He's part of that original group.
He's part of the original group, so it hits you a little bit harder, but rest in peace, Abraham.
Definitely. And you know, just to say a little bit about their respective deaths, Glenn had a very gut punch, heartfelt almost kind of death, with his last words to Maggie being, "I'll find you," as his eyes popping out. And Abraham had an appropriately more badass death. You know, you could see it even in the finale for season 6. He's the only one who, even though he's on his knees, he's still back upright, ready to go, just ready to give himself for his family, and everyone else is kind of hunched over on their knees, scared out of their mind.
He went out like a fucking gangster.
Oh yeah.
We have this theory. It would have been a lot better if the producers and the writers had decided to say, kill off Abraham at the end of last season, and then coming into this new season, hit us with that surprise death of Glenn. It would have done a couple of things. It would have the shock would have worn off. We would have been able to mourn Abraham a little bit more. Properly. And it would have been that much more of a surprise. It would have been much more of a, hey, I'm safe now. Exactly. Like, hey, I'm safe now. Boom, no, you're not. I think it could have been done so much better.
Yeah.
That's just an idea. I mean, it may not be perfect, but I think it's better than what they fucking did.
Yeah. So especially after the last season, the way the last season ended, and the way this season has sort of progressed, although they've been a lot better about it this season, it's beginning to feel like the showrunners are just kind of fucking with their audience to fuck with the audience. And not for any sort of service to the plot, just in a way that feels like they just have contempt for everybody who watches and enjoys their show.
Like, I can imagine a writers meeting, a producers meeting for The Walking Dead going something like, you know what I fucking hate? Our audience. Fuck them. They're fucking stupid.
Let's not give them any closure at all this season.
Nah, fuck them. That's what I imagine it going like.
It wouldn't be a recap if we didn't talk a little bit about fan favorite Daryl. Unfortunately, there's not too much to say, but there is some decent stuff here.
One of the things I really loved was the first episode in the season when we see Daryl and how he's being tortured. And when they lock him up in that cell and they're just playing that song over and over again, I did think that was really great writing because I felt for Daryl. I mean, I was annoyed. The writers and the producers in this episode were able to get a visceral reaction, at least out of me, because I was clenching my fist the entire time that song was playing. I was annoyed, and then towards the end of the scene I realized, oh, they want me to empathize with Daryl. That's what he's going through. As much as I hate it, he's having to live this, and I thought that was great storytelling.
Unfortunately, that's the best part of that episode, as the rest of it amounts to filler, again.
Pretty much.
One of the other great moments in that episode is obviously when Negan asks, "Who are you?" And he says again, "Daryl." Like, what a great, resounding just Daryl moment for him to just, go through all of this stuff, and even for a second, you think he's gonna break and he just doesn't. That was, again, a great scene. If only it hadn't been lost amongst all the filler.
The escape sequence was also a really cool part of Daryl's story arc. Actually, Daryl and Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus slides the note under the door real quick, and he's like, "All right, get out, let's go."
Yeah.
They meet up at the motorcycle lot. Then Fat Tony comes around the corner. I'm pretty sure it's Fat Tony.
I think so.
Fat Tony comes around the corner, sees Daryl, immediately panics, and puts up his arms, and he's like, "Look, I just do this to get by." Middle of season 6, Daryl might have actually let him go, but here Daryl's just seen so much, and we have a great moment where Daryl beats the crap out of him, beats him to death, and then he sees Rick's Colt Python and picks it up, looks at him and says, "It's not about getting by with you people, it's about getting everything." That's just such a great moment because not only is it true, but we've seen how Daryl has just become totally untrustworthy of anybody but his family.
That is one of the greatest parts about that character is he's one of the most strong-willed on the show. Like he said, he did not break. Even though there was a moment where, yeah, you really thought he might actually just cave in. And I think that line about, it's not about getting by with you people, it's about getting everything. That line was like the quintessential Daryl dialogue.
Yeah, just, as far as him recognizing, like, you guys are evil and you're not going to change. There's no way you will change.
Exactly.
But you're not going to change me, so.
Another great scene, again, occurs during the mid-season finale, actually at the end of the episode, when Daryl and Rick finally come face to face again. And there's this moment that, as an audience member, I'm watching it and I said, man, they better hug it out. Like, they've, all the shit that's happened, they haven't gotten to kind of
interact with each other, really.
They haven't gotten to interact with each other. And you're thinking, oh, they better hug it out. And then they go and they shake hands, and I'm like, fuck, they're not gonna hug. And then they hug. And then it's like, all right, cool, all is right with the world. Rick and Daryl are essentially brothers at this point, and it was great to see that emotional connection was still there after everything that had happened.
Especially after so many scenes of them, like, being in the same place together and looking at each other, and Rick wanting to go up to Daryl, and Negan being like, no, you don't talk to him.
I also thought it was great how Daryl handed back his gun, and they didn't say a word, they just kind of nodded at each other. That was pretty cool. That's kind of like, it felt like more old school Walking Dead, what we've kind of been hoping for that they haven't delivered in this season.
Yeah. This season, The Walking Dead once again tries to do the whole split storyline thing. They've tried it many times before, actually 3 other times. Last season was particularly kind of annoying because there was flash forwards and flashbacks for 8 straight episodes almost. This season, it's a lot more about parallel stories, and it still doesn't work. What is supposed to be sort of this perspective of events unfolding from different character perspective ends up being just a slow plotting plot in which nothing happens. Again.
It's hard to run these parallel storylines when a lot of the characters just aren't that interesting, or not necessarily not that interesting, but aren't necessarily worthy of their own entire episode. Case in point, the episode with Tara and Heath. Not to say I don't like these characters. I actually like these characters a lot as supporting characters.
It's hard to not like Tara.
It's hard to not like Tara. She's pretty cool. She's pretty awesome. And you feel for her. She just lost the person she loves. And Heath, well, honestly, we don't know much about him, but he seems like a pretty cool dude.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't feel like they really deserved their own episode. She's just not that interesting. And Heath, we don't know enough about to be that emotionally invested in the character. So why would you do an entire episode dedicated to these two? And the worst part about it, we don't even get any kind of closure on what happened to Heath. Where the fuck is Heath at?
Yep. I mean, he's presumed alive, obviously, because she sees the tire tracks. She sees what was probably a symbol left by him and smiles, but that's all we know. And, not to mention the fact that that episode did nothing to drive the plot forward for any of the characters we actually care about. Not to say we don't care about Tara, but we're introduced to this whole other group who maybe they'll come into play later because they have guns, but Tara did choose not to tell her own group about them, which is admirable.
Yeah,
but
I respect that.
That whole episode did nothing to move forward the main plot, which, it's filler. Again, it was decent, it was half decent filler, but it was filler nonetheless.
And I think what the writers tried to do is try to explain away why she was gone for half a season last season. In real life, she gave birth to her child. Congratulations.
Definitely.
But I felt like it was just kind of a lazy way of doing it. And I know that sounds a little bit odd saying that they dedicated a whole episode to her and calling that lazy. but it just felt like, well, how can we explain why she wasn't with the group the last
half season.
The last half of the season. Well, fuck it. Let's just give her her own episode.
That doesn't move the plot forward.
Hey, Dr. Dre's here too. Why don't we stick him in there too? So in all fairness, the mid-season finale of The Walking Dead did actually do a pretty decent job of running the parallel storylines and kind of having it culminate into one thing.
But it's the only time that has ever really worked on this show and not been either boring or just for the fact of splitting up the stories and not actually being a good way to tell the plot.
Exactly. So basically, they did it, but barely.
So one of the parallel stories running through this season was the Morgan and Carol story. The problem with them is that it's just become hard to care about them anymore. You know, both of their characters have seen, instead of development, they've seen this regression. You know, in the very first episode of The Walking Dead, we see Morgan trying to get over having to kill his zombified wife, and he's ready to kill Rick in a heartbeat if he thinks he's infected. And, you know, the whole Zen Master thing, it was sort of interesting, but once you realize that he's not going to kill anyone, it's like, okay, not only have we seen this before with several other characters in the show, it's tired and worn out and just kind of lame at this point. Same thing for Carol. I get where they were trying to go with that whole PTSD storyline, but after having her be badass for so long, it just felt really cheap and like just a really annoying regression of her character.
Carol used to be one of my top 3 favorite characters of the entire series. She was kind of like your badass aunt, the one that knows how to hunt and fish, but can also cook you a mean apple pie. I'm so disappointed in what they've done to that character because, again, she was one of my favorite characters, and the fact that she no longer wants to kill to protect her people, I know it sounds a little bit harsh, but I don't care about her anymore. You don't want to kill to protect your family? Then you might as well die.
Definitely the most exciting parts of the Carol and Morgan episodes were the parts involving King Ezekiel. You know, Carrie Payton did a great job.
Awesome.
I've been a big fan of his voice work for a long time, and I was super excited when I found out he was playing King Ezekiel. And his scene with Carol at the end of, I think it was episode 2, yeah. when he sheds his persona and he tells her, "You can't bullshit a bullshitter."
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was just great, and you find out, you know, he's a zookeeper, and that's how he has his tiger. But he keeps up the facade because other people need the fantasy. That was super interesting. I'm really disappointed that was his only episode this entire season.
Yeah, I definitely felt like they could have used him a little bit more. Maybe they're trying to hold back on the Morgan, Carol, and the Kingdom narrative until the latter half of this season. But he was definitely the most interesting part of the episodes with Morgan and Carol this season.
Super excited to see more of him. And the Kingdom.
Absolutely. And that fucking tiger. And in related news, Carl continues to be pretty fucking lame.
Coral.
This
is not speaking of Chandler Riggs' acting prowess, because he's a great actor.
Yeah, he's doing an amazing job at the role.
Yes, it's just the writing that's done for Carl, it just is subpar, and I kind of feel bad because they're kind of squandering Chandler Riggs' acting prowess.
Definitely. You remember back in the day when the only concern about Coral was for him to stay in the fucking house?
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
One of the most exciting prospects this season is Maggie's character. She's been reeling emotionally from Glenn's death pretty much this entire part of the season, and it's awesome to see her potentially lead her own town. I've always liked her character. She's always been a really strong person the entire time. So the possibility of her being in charge of Hilltop, I'm elated about, and I can't wait to see what they do with that.
While pregnant, no less.
Fucking badass.
Without a doubt, the biggest saving grace this season has been Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance as Negan. The guy is just a joy to watch in this role. You know, obviously it sucks that he killed Glenn and Abraham, but he's very charismatic. You know, there's no denying his popularity among fans. It just, the way he almost prances around on screen, waving Lucille around, like it's you're kind of smiling, but you're also really tense in any scene he's in. Even in the episodes where not a lot happens, like the 4th episode, where he visits Alexandria for the first time, and he's just kind of, it's just another episode of him breaking Rick down, which he already did, and him threatening to kill someone again. Again, even in those kind of pretty basically fillerish episodes, he's just a joy to watch on screen, and it's so much fun to see him having that much fun in the role.
I think the character of Negan could have been played by another actor, but I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing the character the most justice that probably could be done right now of actors that are working in television dramas.
Oh yeah.
Wildly talented, extremely charismatic, like he said. He's the bad guy that I'm kind of rooting for at this point.
He's kind of the Walking Dead's Joker.
Exactly. That's actually a really good comparison. He's the Walking Dead's Joker. He's the bad guy that you
the Dark
love.
Knight Joker.
All in all, the show has started to disappoint me. And although there are aspects of it that are exciting and that I enjoy, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance, Maggie potentially coming to her own as a real leader. King Ezekiel, I forgot to mention that, but King Ezekiel is definitely an exciting prospect. I'd love to see more of his story. But all in all, I'm at the point where I'm just hate watching the show. I'm watching it, even though I hate the show, because at this point, I am invested in the show so damn much that I need to know how it ends. I need to see it out to the end.
You know that feeling when you're full and you're eating a bag of chips, but you're almost done with the bag of chips? You don't want to put it away because it's not a good enough snack for you to have later. So you think, well, I may as well eat it now.
That's pretty much where I'm at. And I don't blame any fan who, at this point, has given up on the show.
Hey, kudos to you, actually. You're braver than I.
I keep watching it out of hate, and in part because I hate myself.
I think for me it's partially a social thing.
Yeah.
It's still one of the most commonly talked about shows among my friends and my family.
Yeah,
So-
definitely. That pretty much sums up our thoughts on The Walking Dead Season 7 so far.
Yeah, it's about eight episodes of filler with maybe between all the episodes about maybe 55 minutes of actual plot.
And out of 55 minutes of actual plot, maybe about 20 minutes of plot that's actually interesting. And out of that 20 minutes, 85% of it is Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan.
Oh yeah.
We'd love to know what you guys think about The Walking Dead Season 7 so far. Are you happy it's going on break so you can kind of take some time away and recover from the emotional abuse that you've endured? Or are you already excited and can't wait for it to come back on?
Yeah, and I've read up to about issue 100 in the comics, so I saw Glenn's death in the comics. After that, I kind of stopped reading just because lack of interest, and I had other stuff going on. And stuff's expensive. But, if you've read farther than that, let us know what you've thought of the season so far. Has it stuck pretty closely to the source material? Has it kind of veered off? How do you think it would better serve the story? For them to either be closer or maybe farther away? Just let us know. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. And unlike The Walking Dead's writers and showrunners, we appreciate you.
If nobody loves you, we love you.